Good morning. This is Alicia the Zipper Lady, and this morning I am going to teach you how to pattern a cushion. I've picked one from an old chair that I bought at a garage sale, and my dogs really love this chair, and so I've decided to make a linen slipcover on it. And so this is the initial part of patterning to make me a new cushion cover. This is what I normally use to make a pattern with. I normally have downproof ticking on my table because I make most of my inserts, and so I always have a little piece that's left over. And so I cut this a couple inches bigger around than the cushion is. And the reason I really like this predominantly is it's light enough that I can see through it. It's strong enough that it doesn't contort. So it's pretty good pattern making material. The other thing that's really good is black outlining. And so for all those little bits and pieces of black outlining you've got, save those because those are great for making patterns. So this came out of a chair that is probably 100 years old. It has dead foam on the inside. Somebody's replaced this once, whoever did this upholstery. And it feels to me like there's probably polyester batting on top of it that is just lumpy bumpy. And because this is the dog chair, I'm not going to remake this. Normally I would remake it. I would put new foam in the center and then put a feather wrap around the outside of it. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use this. And I've looked at my chair and I've realized that it's a little tight right here in my chair, and that I really need to add some extra ears on the side because it doesn't come out to the edge of my chair. So what you want to do is you want to look at your cushion, look at how it fits in your chair, and if it gapes on the side, then you want to make that measurement, and we're going to add that after we have patterned, but before you cut. So basically all I'm going to do is lay the fabric over the top. And notice I'm giving myself working room. And it's going to be, pretty close, but I'm going to add a little extra. Normally, if I was doing this for myself and no one was watching, I would use the blue pen, which goes away with water. But today I'm going to use this one simply so you can see what I'm doing. And what I do is I start on the welt. I kind of hold it up so that it's flatter. I feel for where the welt is attached to the cushion and I make a mark. And so this is a permanent marker. I have to tell you that I would probably use something that was washable just because if it bleeds through, you've really messed up your upholstery if you ever want to take it off. So I'm going to just pull it out, mark, and I'm marking right where the seam is attached to the welt cord. And I'm just going to go all the way around and do that. And because this is pretty light fabric, I really can actually see that seam allowance. And so I'm going to pull this ear out like this. And instead of making one mark, I'm going to make a series of marks like this, just so that I know where that's at. So I'm just going to go up the side, around the back to follow the curve of the chair. And again, I'm feeling with one hand, marking with the other. If this takes you more than 15 minutes, you're overthinking it. Now your first one might take you a little bit longer, but just think about the fact that this is not metal. If you add a little extra, you can go in and change it if you absolutely have to. But it's going to be so much better than what you have on the chair now that anything's going to be fabulous. So I've got it marked all the way around, 2 to 3 inches apart, except this guy right here. because this is where I'm going to draw it in a little bit and make the ears a little bigger. So I'm going to find the 2 ears and put those together. And it just takes a little bit. And then I'm going to match the front, or come pretty close. And hopefully your chair is pretty symmetrical, so it's going to come out. And I'm going to pull now the cushion out from under this, because honestly we don't need this anymore. Drop it back in the chair. So here's your cushion, the outline of your cushion. And I'm hoping you can see these blue marks. And because the fabric is pretty thin, I can see underneath, so I'm marking and matching the ear, and the front is pretty close. But I'm going to rotate it just a little tiny bit to make sure that my front matches across here. And then I'm going to just connect the dots at this point. And because I've done this so much, I do this freehand. And we're going to come around here. And I can see, here's the mark for one side of the chair, and I can see this one over here underneath for the other side of the chair. So I've kind of just split the difference on that one. And I want my front pretty flat because the front of my chair is pretty flat. So I'm going to make a few marks as if I was drawing, you know, back and forth a bit. And then here's the end of my ear. And I want to make my ear an inch longer. So here is that mark right there. That's an inch. And so I'm going to, using this same idea for the curve, I'm just going to swing this out. But this is too tight, and so I'm going to swing it back in. And this is where it was. It's a little tight there, so I'm just going to take a little bit of that off, just like that. So I normally, after I get this done, I go ahead and I put arrow marks on the line I want to use. Then I'm going to use my ruler, my clear ruler, and I normally make 1/2 inch seam allowances. However, because I want this to be just a tad sloppy and I don't have to worry about having cut it too tight, I'm actually going to add a 3/4 to this. And then I have wiggle room, or as we call fudge factor. So I'm going to start across the front, and I want my front pretty straight. And so I'm going to go out 3/4 of an inch, draw this line, and notice I just draw it straight. Now as the curve goes, I'm going to make a mark here, and then I'm going to start following the curve around with my ruler, which is flat, but when I get ready to cut the pattern, we're going to cut it rounded where the 2 crosses of the lines are. So as I get ready to cut this, I'm going to cut this straight, and then I'm going to start rounding it here, and I'll round it here. And then I'm going to round it around the ear. And so here is where the original cushion comes. And I want this to come in here, like that. And so I'm just kind of reassessing that a bit. I'm going to draw a long line here. And basically the way I quit drawing is where it overlaps and starts to turn. So now you see where you're going to have to cut here. Then we're going to do this. connect the dots. Like that. Now my sides of my chair are straight, and so I'm going to make one long seam along the side. And remember, we kind of evened it out from the other side. So I'm going to put my 3/4 right in the middle of that line and drop it down like that. And then you can see where it just starts to turn right here. I'm going to put my ruler back up and I'm going to match it until it starts to turn again. And then another one. And another one. Another one. And I'm just tracing the curve using the 3/4 of an inch. Now the back of my chair is rounded, it's not flat. And so I'm going to round this last line. Like that. And you're done. So now I'm going to simply cut this out. And every place it crosses, I'm going to give it a little bit of a round. I'm going to pull this to me just a little bit. So here's my front. And I'm going to fudge that corner right there. And then if you're a dressmaker, you know that you always notch your centers. So I'm going to notch my center in the front, notch my center in the back, and I'm ready to lay this out on the fabric and cut. Pretty simple, wasn't it? So that's a rounded chair. And you can see, you can actually lay this right in the base of the chair and make sure that it fits. But I can guarantee you it's going to be pretty close. Now then, for a square pillow, it's so much easier. So here's the little square pillow we started with the other day. So I'm going to use my tape measure. Since I made this, I know I made it 19. Usually I make my insert just a hair bigger than my exterior. So it's going to be 19 this way and 16 this way. So here's my fabric. This has been washed. It was pressed, but it doesn't look like it. And the placement is always pretty interesting because whether you're doing a rounded cushion like this one, or a square one like this, chances are real good your fabric is a little wonky, especially when you do stripes. And so I pick a stripe, wherever that might be. Make sure that it's in the same place, top and bottom, in the center of the cushion. And then you cut from there. So if this is a little off and this is a little off, chances are real good no one's going to see it. But they're certainly going to see it in the center of your cushion and up the back of your chair if you're going to go on and make a slipcover. The other thing I try to do is that this was 60-inch wide fabric. When it was washed, it came down to about 57. And so I really want to do what I call two-up. So I want to do part of it on the right-hand side And then I want to have enough room on the left-hand side of whatever my cushion, after my cushion is done, so that I can actually do my zipper band up the side of the selvage. And so I try to match my pattern and then leave a little spare on the side because I want to cut my zipper band all the way up the side. So this little guy, oops, my iron is on. Yeehaw. So this is what I'm going to do to cut this guy. Because he's small and because I know that no matter what happens, if he's a ½ inch too narrow, nobody's going to mind. I'm actually going to cut ½ inch seam allowances on this. And we're going to add that to it. So remember we measured 19 across, so I'm going to cut it 20. And this is going to be 16 inches high, or 17 cut. So what I do is I decide where the middle of my cushion is going to be. So here is 19, whoops, go this way, it's easier. Here's 20 right here. And so now I'm going to move it back and forth on my stripe until I like what I see. And my own personal preference is that if you're going to look at a stripe, this is not a repeating stripe that is even. It has an odd repeat. So it doesn't start here and go out this way or start here and go out that way. It just goes across the fabric. And so it's not going to be centered. But when I see it in my eye, I like having the pink stripes on the outside of my pillow. And for some reason, it doesn't bother me what's on the inside. You kind of want to squint at it a little bit, just like you would be doing if you were doing a painting. But you want to squint at it and see where it looks really good. And it also depends on if this is going to be part of a slipcover and where the stripe lands on the body of the slipcover. But these are just going to be on some old furniture that I have in my greenhouse. So anyway, I'm going to figure that out. So here's 20. And I'm going to put this down on my other metal ruler. And I'm going to rotate it until I think it's straight. Then I'm going to use it this way as a T-square, and I'm going to finish rotating it so that the stripe in the center goes right up the cushion. And then I'm going to draw a line. And again, I'm using this pen so you can see it. I wouldn't use this on something I was making for a customer. I would definitely use a washable pen, and I would never, ever, ever use a pencil simply because you can't get it out. Chalk is not efficient enough for me unless you have one of those little chalk things that's got the wheel in the bottom. Those are pretty tight, and those are close enough for me. Again, remember the 30-second rule. So I'm just going to draw across this. That becomes the bottom of my pillow. So I'm going to put this back up here. I know I need 20 inches. I've got measuring things on my ruler. You can use those if you want. So I need 20 inches. So this is going to be the center. Make a mark here. Make a mark at 40. Put the ruler back up at 30, which is the center of this particular pillow. I mean, you can use it any place. You know you need 20 inches, so I just arbitrarily picked and worked out from it. So now I know that it's perpendicular in the center. I'm going to come out to this mark, draw a line. I'm going to go out to my other end mark, make sure it works. draw a line, and then I'm going to measure up (17 inches). 17 inches over here using the bottom metal ruler as my place where I hold everything so that everything stays square. I'm not real sure how to say that, but I use this as the bottom and I hold on to it and then measure. So if you measure over here and it's 16 here, or 17 rather, I just run it over here, I hit 17, and then when I make this mark across the top, this should be absolutely square on all four sides. At this point, I'm going to mark out the other side of it, and then I'm going to use my rolling cutter and cut it. And I cut with the rolling cutter against my plastic ruler, not the metal one, because I have learned that if I'm in a hurry, my blade goes into the metal ruler and it just makes a great big ding in it. So that's all you have to do to pattern everything. And so at this point, you're going to go out and buy all the fabric you need for your cushion, if you haven't already. Last lesson, the first lesson in the series, I talked about buying a yard and washing it, drying it, and pressing it so that you could see how much it shrank. So now you need to do all the math. And if you know you can get two sides, the front and the back, across your fabric once it's been washed, then all you need to do is take the height of your pillows, or this measurement on your pillow for the one that is rounded. Add a couple inches and do the side to side. Then you have to have the band, and if you cut this ½ inch, the band is going to be the finished 3 inches plus a half, so you need a 4-inch band. This guy is a 5-inch band with 3/4 on either side, so that's going to be 6 1/2. See, I can never do the math for that 3/4 of an inch. It just twists me up every time. The halves get me. Anyway, but you measure that, you measure up your fabric, you add your band, so you add the length of your cushion here, however many you're going to make. Give yourself a little bit of space. Figure your bands are going to go straight across all the width of your goods. Your zipper bands hopefully are going to go up the side next to your selvage. And you're going to start planning out your cuts as well as how much fabric you need. So I always do it in my book. And when I do it in my book, I basically do this. So I'm assuming my fabric is here, and here's this guy and this guy. This is the front and the back of my pillow or my cushion. I'm going to do running measurements down the side. So I'm going to say I need 20 inches for this. Then I need the banding or the side piece or the boxing, this piece. So this is going to go straight across. Give myself 5 inches. So I know I have 2 pillows that I'm going to cut. And remember, we're going to run our zipper bands up the side. And I think because this side is going to work out better, we're going to cut the zipper band off first, all the way down the length of our fabric. And then this is the piece that goes across the front of the pillow right here. So I need 25 inches roughly for each pillow. I know I've got 2 of those. So I've got a 20 plus a 5. So there's my pillows. And then I know that my cushions are 22 long. They go this way. I've got 2 cushions like this. Actually, I have 3 cushions. So this is 22 plus a seam allowance. So I'm going to give it 24 out here, plus my band, 6 inches. And I know I have 3 sets of cushions. 1, 2, 3. Add everything up across the side and divide it by 36, and you know what you need. So there's that. In the next lesson, we are going to actually cut everything out, serge it, and make welt cord. Ta for now.